All right. Good morning, everyone. Can you guys see my screen okay?
We do.
Awesome. Great. Thank you guys so much for attending today's lightning talks. They've all been very informative up until this point. My name is Preston Radke from the Office of IT Accessibility, and I will be talking to you very briefly about the different services we offer, some important updates, and some kind of next steps that you and your organizations can take to further spread the good word of accessibility, if you will. All right, so let's first by just defining what web accessibility is. There's lots of different definitions out there. If you Google searched web accessibility, the first 10 results would yield some sort of different definition. But the one that we in our office like to go with is from the accessibility thinker, we like to say it, Ms. Cynthia Waddell, and it reads, development of information systems flexible enough to accommodate the needs of the broadest range of users regardless of age or disability. And this definition really dovetails perfectly into something that we like to call the curb cut effect. So the curb cut effect, it's an analogy obviously, but the curb cut effect focuses on curb cuts on street corners. So curb cuts were initially developed to assist wheelchair users in safely transitioning from the raised sidewalk into the street. But how many times have you or anyone been pushing like a stroller or a cart of groceries, and it's certainly a lot easier to traverse down that ramp as opposed to trying to lift your supplies or your cart over the the raised edge or try to balance it into the street. You'd run the risk of losing all your materials or run the risk of injury. That is such an illustrative example because the beautiful thing about accessibility is that it does not accommodate and open doors just for one group. The great thing about accessibility is it improves the experience for everyone, not just a single minority or a single demographic. And I think that's one thing that we really try to highlight with our work. And one thing that I really want to point out, and I'll reemphasize this at the conclusion of this presentation, is that we are the Office of IT Accessibility, and IT accessibility is our, that's our thing. That's what we're tasked with concerning ourselves with. But in order to develop and curate and facilitate a more equitable and accessible community, accessibility is actually everyone's responsibility. Be it facilitating accessible atmospheres and work environments to developing accessible Word documents and web pages. We truly won't have a fully accessible and equitable university until everyone completely buys in. And attending this meeting is a perfect first step to changing attitudes and spreading the good word of accessibility, like I said. All right, so I'm going to talk very briefly about the history of our office. We are relatively new. Office of IT Accessibility was founded in 2017 in response to a complaint for the Office of Civil Rights. In the preceding 3 years, we've conducted hundreds of different trainings. We've consulted on remediations on different websites and mobile applications. We've expanded our staff. It's been a very meteoric and quite impressive rise in output for our office. In March, as everyone's lives have been transformed by the coronavirus, our work also transformed. Since everyone is doing work virtually now, accessibility was flung completely to the forefront of everyone's minds. Suddenly teachers now had to account for teaching virtually and sharing documentation strictly virtually. Consequently, as I'll discuss later on in this presentation, our training attendees have skyrocketed. The amount of organizational content that we've had to audit has also skyrocketed. The amount of enrollees in different training resources that we offer has also gone up exponentially, and that's truly awesome. I'm very proud of all the work that our team has done in that regard to get those numbers up. All right, so I'm going to briefly highlight some of the different services that we offer. Those include trainings, webinars, and workshops. IT acquisition review and acquisition assistance, unit audits, professional development opportunities, testing tools and resources, and end user support. Okay, so first we're going to talk about webinars and workshops. So we have two different types of training modalities that we offer. The first is kind of our linear kind of predetermined trainings that we deliver usually every week or every other week through each semester. We actually have a training tomorrow coming up. And the second one involves our individualized trainings, which are curated specifically for a unit or group. So first I'm going to talk about the linear trainings, and I'm so proud of my team for this. Before fall semester, we were averaging about 100 attendees per semester for all the trainings that we offered. And this semester, we've seen a 5-fold increase in the number of attendees for all of our webinars and trainings. And I think that's due to, like I said, a greater awareness of accessibility. And I think our team has really done a great job leveraging different communication networks and marketing techniques to spread, the news of the new schedule and the different trainings that we would be offering. And as a side note, the new schedule of trainings for spring semester will be going live in about 2 weeks or so. So please be on the lookout for that. And I look forward to seeing you guys in a few upcoming trainings. So some common topics that we offer, we have a large stable of these. They're kind of in rotation based on need and how long they haven't been delivered. But typically we deliver trainings on LMSs, content accessibility, so accessibility of like Microsoft Word documents, PDFs. We offer several different trainings that focus on captioning and audio description, different testing techniques. I do want to point out, though, that we are very much so always open to new ideas and inspirations for our training. So we always like to kind of listen to previous attendees and other individuals that our office works with to possibly learn about what training topics we could potentially cover or speak on later on down the road. And then the second modality, the individualized trainings, in some ways these are actually better than our linear trainings, only because they are a lot more interactive and specialized. So how these work are, let's say that you and your team wants to be trained on a topic that isn't covered or isn't covered enough in our predetermined linear training. So you would just email our accessibility@rutgers.edu or email one of our email accounts directly and just explain your situation, talk about the different training topics that you would like to be talked about, maybe highlight some testing demonstrations that you would like to be shown. And then we would communicate amongst the four of us, the OITA team, and then we would decide who would be delivering that training. And then we would, typically before March, we would go to you guys in person, but now of course we would just deliver that virtually over Zoom. And that's obviously how all of our trainings are going to be held going forward. So I highly encourage anyone who is interested to obviously go to both trainings, but if there are specific needs that you'd like to be covered, maybe you would want something tested, please reach out to us. We can build a specific training for you, or we can work something else out. All right, so we also provide assistance with IT acquisition and procurement. So the first concept I want to highlight here is something called a VPAT, VPAT, that stands for Volunteer Product Accessibility Template. So a VPAT is a document that is produced by a vendor that highlights all the functions and features of their product and how they adhere to certain accessibility standards and laws. Now, where we come in is because for someone who doesn't work with accessibility or has never looked at a VPAT before, they can be very overwhelming. So we can work with you and your team to help you analyze VPATs. We can assist you in, comparing VPATs if you are working with multiple vendors, or comparing VPATs, if you will. In some instances, we may be able to help verify if what it says in the VPAT is actually true, because unfortunately, there are many instances where companies will say that, their product adheres to WCAG 2.0 and really none of its functions are accessible at all. So we can, in some instances, assist you in that regard. Additionally, we can help you develop a roadmap for you to share with the vendor. So a roadmap would essentially a roadmap would lie out the different timelines and deadlines for the vendor to update and remediate any accessibility flaws that their product has before purchase or after purchase. And then the final bit that I'd like to talk about in this section deals with legal language. So our office works with general counsel to include contract language that you can include in your contract with your vendor to ensure that they get held accountable, that it's written in paper that this product is accessible or needs to be accessible. All right, so unit audits. So this is a pretty important topic here, I personally think. Unit audits involve a comprehensive scanning and auditing of a department's accessibility of a package of content or a web page. So it could honestly be up to you. It could be honestly anything that you want us to audit. It could be just a simple PDF or just a single web page, or it could be an entire website or mobile application. It's a completely voluntary process. You would contact our office, highlight what content you would want to be analyzed, and then depending on how large the scope of the content is, one or a few of our analysts will conduct an accessibility scan using manual and automated testing. And then we would document all the issues that we found, and then we would meet with our contact person from your department and deliver our findings and provide any remediation suggestions. We cannot actually go in and fix any of the accessibility issues, but we can certainly act as your resource to explore any solutions for those issues. So like I said, there is really no set standard as to what we can audit. It's completely it's a case-by-case basis. So we're completely open to whatever you would like us to look at. Okay, so that really dovetails perfectly into Deque's Axe Monitor. So Axe Monitor used to be called World Space Comply. I know for a fact that some of you in this meeting have used World Space Comply or Axe Monitor. So for some of you, this may be preaching to the choir, but Axe Monitor is a very robust and massively powerful accessibility auditing program that we use to scan entire websites for accessibility issues. So there are lots of really effective, single page accessibility scanners, but if you have to scan an entire page, their entire website, that could take hours. Whereas this automated scanner through Axe Monitor can do it. It can scan up to 5 pages at a single time or 5 levels deep. It's very powerful. It's also free for Rutgers affiliates or Rutgers individuals. You just have to contact our office. You may have to provide some additional position-related information, like what your role is and what you would like to be scanning. And that's just because we may need to do some that just deals with configuring your account per se. So that's one of the major tools that we use for scanning entire websites, and it seems to be very popular with lots of different users here at Rutgers. And if you would like training with Axe Monitor or any other accessibility scanning software, please let us know and we can provide resources to you. Okay, not to be confused with Axe Monitor, I now want to talk about Deque University. And University is maybe my favorite application that we're going to talk about here today. So University is this massive industry level training repository that focuses singularly on accessibility. So think LinkedIn Learning, except only focused on accessibility. And I can't emphasize just how broad and how overarching University is. So you can get trained on anything from Angular accessibility, JavaScript accessibility, to learning about models of disability or customer service for individuals with disabilities. There's almost, I don't think that there's anything that Deque University doesn't cover that touches accessibility or disability culture at all, honestly. And the other great thing about university, it's completely free and available to all Rutgers individuals. Again, you would just contact our office. We would take your email address. We would self-enroll you, and you would get an email from Deque University prompting you to set up an account. Once in, if you need assistance selecting courses, we can kind of give you some recommendations, or you can just poke around on your own. It's a pretty user-friendly site we've found, so just feel free to explore once you're in. Also, the great thing about Deque University, for certain licensures, you can actually get continuing education credit for taking university courses. And with a lot of these courses, they're just come as you go. They're just self-paced. You can just do them whenever. They're not led by instructors, or there's no time limits on them. So it's completely up to you in that regard. Before I close up here, I just want to highlight the different ways you can get in contact with us. So if you have any questions today, please put them in the chat. Jesse Pulido myself or Jesse Pulido will answer them after this meeting if there's time permitting. Also, you'll notice that Accessibility at Rutgers is located in the footer of Rutgers web pages. That links directly to one of our accounts, that's where you can place some accessibility issues that you find just in your day-to-day life when you're on one of the Rutgers sites. Additionally, we are very active in Slack. There is a specific accessibility channel, and all four of us are very active in other Slack channels, always talking about accessibility, trying to make accessibility part of the conversation. All right, so like I said, I really want to thank you for obviously selecting this talk today and for listening to this talk today. And I just want to point out that accessibility is a process. So I know for many of you right now, this could be a completely brand new concept. You may feel very overwhelmed, and that's completely fine. The very important first step for learning anything about accessibility is just asking questions. Sometimes the simplest questions can yield such rudimentary answers that can truly shape and help you frame how you view accessibility in different scenarios going forward. If you are someone that is afraid that you may have inaccessible content, I would say, if you can, test. Almost nothing will be made accessible overnight. It is very much so a process. Your best bet is to do frequent testing and providing updates and remediation when possible. And please get in contact with us. We are your resource. And my closing remark harkens back to what I said in slide 2. Accessibility is everyone's responsibility. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you to continue spreading the good word of accessibility.